My name is Kelly, and at the time this story begins, I am 31. I live in a quiet suburb of Providence, Rhode Island, where every evening is tinged with shades of tranquility and comfort, where the old maple trees and the streets rustle with branches, as if whispering something kind, and in the morning you can hear the squeak of the bicycle chain of the neighbor's boy rushing to school. For almost 9 years now, I have been working as a programmer in a company that does not seek to take over the world, but regularly pays salaries and does not require overwork. That was more than enough for me. I didn't dream of luxury, I dreamed of stability. And before we continue, write in the comments from which city you are watching this video. Enjoy watching. Right after college, I rented a small one-bedroom apartment in a brick house built sometime in the 70s. The ceilings were low and the windows were narrow, but there was something cozy about it, almost intimate. I've been living here all this time. The apartment became my refuge. I knew every creak of the floor, I could reach blindly for the light switch, and I could feel exactly when the water in the boiler was starting to cool down. There wasn't much space, but I had enough. Especially when you consider that I spent most of my time at my laptop, immersed in code, music on headphones, and a cup of hot coffee on the windowsill. I've been living an almost ascetic life for the last 3 years. I evaluated every trip to the cafe, every new blouse, even a subscription to a streaming service through the prism of, is it worth my future home? I was comparing prices, looking for stocks, making tea instead of lattes. My life has been reduced to cutting, compressing, postponing. Some called it a boring existence. But for me, it was a journey to a dream. And so, one weekday evening, after another meeting with a Zoom client, I logged into the bank's personal account and saw that the amount I had set myself a goal was finally in place. The numbers on the screen seemed almost unreal. I reread them several times, as if it could be a dream. The down payment for a house is not a fantasy, but a reality. I was overcome by such a storm of feelings that I involuntarily pressed my palms to my cheeks and laughed out loud. Then she burst into tears. Happiness gushed out like spring rain after a long winter. I immediately reached for the phone. My heart was pounding with excitement, just like when I was a teenager. I called my mom. Not because I wanted to ask for advice, I just wanted her to share the joy with me. "Mom," I gasped as soon as she answered. "Guess what?" "What's wrong, honey?" "I've saved up. The entire amount is in place. I can finally make the down payment on the house." There was a short, barely perceptible silence on the other end of the line, and in that silence I already felt that something had gone wrong. "That's great, Kelly. And which house are you going to look for?" "Not much," I replied with a smile. "One room, cozy. The main thing is to have good internet and light. I don't need much." She smiled, coldly, with a hint of disappointment. "Kelly, are you serious? It's a big purchase. You have to think ahead. What if you get married and have children? You need space." "Mom," I tried to keep my voice calm. "I haven't even had a date in over a year. I'm not going to build a family nest. I just need a corner where I can live and work in peace." "Exactly," she interrupted. "You don't date because you live in a box. Buy a normal house and life will start to change. There will be opportunities." I stopped talking. It disappointed me how quickly my victory turned into a reason for criticism. I wanted to hear, "I'm proud of you," but I heard, "You're doing everything wrong." The next day, I met with a realtor. His name was Trevor, and he looked like something out of a catalog cover, with perfect hair, a smile you wanted to trust, and manners, as if he'd been born with a degree in etiquette. But most importantly, he wasn't trying to sell me dreams. He was listening. We started with cozy lofts in old houses, with studios with panoramic windows, where every corner seems to be created for inspiration. I fell in love with one such loft in Johnston. It was bright, with wooden beams on the ceiling and a tiny balcony that could accommodate 2 chairs and a pot of basil. I had almost made up my mind when Mom called again. "I think I should come with you," she said. "This is too serious for you to make decisions alone." I froze. My stomach tightened. I knew that if I let her into this process, everything would get out of control. But I'm tired of arguing. And then she agreed. Out of exhaustion. Out of the hope that maybe she just wants to help. Only she wasn't the only one who came to the next screening. Her father was with her. And now we were on our way to see a house with 4 bedrooms, 2 living rooms and a gym room. I felt like I was in someone else's dream, where everything looks beautiful, but not yours. I tried to say that I didn't need it, but every time I ran into a gentle but relentless pressure. "We could make a guest room here," Mom said, smiling at Trevor. "And here, the nursery. Imagine that, Kelly. It's so easy to breathe here, not like in your box." I looked out the window at the manicured lawn and quietly asked myself, whose dream is this? Is it mine? Or her? At home, I lay down on the couch, staring tiredly at the ceiling. During these 3 years, I have denied myself almost everything for the sake of my goal. And now, when I finally got close to her, she suddenly began to crumble under the pressure of other people's expectations. I looked down at my laptop on the table. My whole life was in that piece of metal. And I understood, I don't want anyone else to decide where I live. I have to make my own choice. Just me. It was an overcast Thursday, and the sky over Providence was covered with a gray sheet of clouds, as if someone had forgotten to turn the morning around. After another endless day filled with demonstrations of luxury homes with marble kitchens, jacuzzis, and rooms where echoes roam freely, I felt exhausted. My parents and I looked at another option, a house that stretched my budget to the limit, like a thread that was about to burst. Mom, of course, was beaming with delight, as if she herself was about to be handed the keys to the palace. Dad, as always, didn't say a word, but nodded approvingly, telling everyone, "You can make a nursery here and imagine a summer barbecue with a big family." I was silent. Everything was boiling inside me, but on the outside there was only a polite smile. I didn't know where I was going when I got behind the wheel after the show. The hands turned by themselves in the direction of the parental home. I guess I wanted to end this performance. Just tell them that maybe I'll agree. That's enough already. Let it be this house. I wanted to exhale, as if consent could give me peace. I was wrong. My parents' house stood on the corner of a quiet street, surrounded by lilac bushes and memories. My school years were spent here. I kissed for the first time on the porch, my dad fixed my bike here, and my mom made raspberry jam in the summer. All this made the house warm and homely, despite its modesty. I've always kept a spare key with me. It's been that way since I was a teenager. I put it in the keyhole almost automatically and went in, as usual, shouting, "Hey, is anyone home?" There was no answer, but there were voices coming from the kitchen. I recognized my mother's voice right away, energetic, confident, with a slight note of superiority. The second voice belonged to Lauren, my younger sister. Apparently, they were talking on the speakerphone. The sound was clear, resonating in the hallway, as if it specifically invited them to listen. "We almost talked Kelly into taking that big house," Mom said with obvious satisfaction in her voice. "Everything is going as it should. As soon as she buys it, my father and I will move in with her." I stopped dead in my tracks. My brain tried to make sense of what was said, but a heaviness was already beginning to creep into my chest. "Are you going to sell your house?" Lauren asked. No, not at all. Josh and I will give it to you. Anyway, Kelly's alone. No husband, no children. Let it bring at least some benefit. Are you sure she'll agree?" "Of course. She's obedient. We'll tell her it's best for her, and she'll do the right thing. We're monitoring her, honey. Since high school." I couldn't move. The world around me froze. Even the creaking of the wooden floor under my feet seemed to freeze in shock. Her mother's words hung in the air, sharp as glass. Obedient. We control it. Let it bring benefits. These were not phrases that could be forgotten. These were blows to the places where I believed that my family and I had reciprocity, care, and respect. I felt a chill running down my spine. This is not just manipulation. This is a betrayal, thought out and carefully staged. I've been saving up for 3 years, denying myself almost everything. And they've already painted my life as if I'm a stage set in their play. I took a step back, slowly and quietly, like a thief caught in someone else's house. And suddenly, deliberately loudly, the front door slammed. "Hey!" I shouted cheerfully. "Is anyone home?" Instantly, everything in the kitchen went silent. After a moment, Mom called out with unexpected warmth in her voice. "We're here in the kitchen, honey. We were just talking about you." "Yes, I heard." I muttered to myself, forcing a fake smile on my face. I went into the kitchen. Mom was sitting at the table, holding a phone in her hands. My father drank his coffee in silence. Lauren, as I understand it, has already passed out. Mom looked up at me, open and radiant, as if nothing had happened. "You're on time. We were just discussing that wonderful 4-bedroom house. You're thinking of buying it, aren't you?" I looked at her. She's so good at pretending. How easy it is to lie to her. I guess I really have always been obedient. I just didn't want to see the truth. "I'm still thinking," I replied, feeling the rage building inside. "This is a serious decision. We need to think about everything." "Well, I'm sure you'll make the right decision," she said with the same forced warmth. "The main thing is to think ahead." I nodded. The 3 of us had dinner, chicken and potatoes, wine, light conversations about nothing. I pretended that everything was fine. She answered questions, smiled at the right moments, and even joked. But all the while, I could feel the pain throbbing behind my rib bone. It wasn't just a shock, it was a premonition of the end. The end of trust. The end of illusions. When I returned home, the streets were already dark, and the windows of the houses were scattered with islands of warmth. I entered my small apartment and didn't turn on the light. I just sat down on the floor in the middle of the living room and let the tears flow. I wasn't crying out of anger or even pain. I cried because I realized that everything that I thought was mine had long since become someone else's. My family didn't see me as a person. Just a resource. Just an opportunity to improve their comfort. I ran my hand over my face, trying to wipe away the tears, but they started flowing again. I saved money, dreamed, and believed that this house would become a symbol of my growing up, my choice. And they decided that I had to use my dreams for their convenience. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, replaying the conversation in my head. Every word cut like a nail into a tree. I knew I'd never be the same again. That this scene changed me. I finally saw my family for what it is. And maybe it was the beginning of something new. The beginning of liberation. But at that moment, all I felt was emptiness. After that night, when I sat in the dark of my tiny apartment, the tears had long dried up, but the feeling of betrayal still weighed heavily on my soul. It seemed to me that the walls, once cozy, were now shaking with tension, as if they had witnessed what I had heard in my parents' house. Providence, dear and familiar, suddenly became cramped. Its narrow streets, along which I used to walk with coffee in my hands, now reminded me not of tranquility, but of a trap. I saw this city differently, as a cage with the doors open, in which I stayed for too long, not noticing that I could fly away. In the morning, after taking a sip of cold coffee, I opened the phone book and found a name that had not caused alarm for a long time, only a bright nostalgia. Julie. My friend from college is an eternal optimist with a sincere laugh and an amazing ability to always tell the truth. She lived in Asheville, North Carolina, and more than once jokingly said that I should move in with them if I got tired of living under the microscope of the family. It seemed hypothetical at the time, but now it has become salvation. Julie. My voice was shaking slightly. Kelly. Wow, what a miracle. How are you? Her voice was warm, filled with lively interest, like the sun through a window on the first day of spring. It's bad. Hey, do you have a minute? I told her everything. Without notes. About my mom, about the conversation with Lauren, about the house that was never my choice. Julie was silent almost to the end, and only when I stopped talking did her voice cut through the silence like a knife through a cloth. These people. I can't believe they would do this to you. I can't either, I said softly. But they did. And I don't want to be in this anymore. There was a short silence, and then she spoke, barely breathing. Kel, you have to leave. Truth. To go far away. Listen, you've always said that you dream of a home, of peace. So this is your chance. Move to Asheville. It's cool here. And the housing market is adequate. I have a friend, Laura, she's a great agent, she'll help you get your bearings. And by the way, she added with a grin, it's almost 900 miles from your manipulators. I smiled. For the first time in several days. Are you serious? Absolutely. I'll even take you in if you want. You can stay with me until you find your perfect home. Or take something off right away, I'll help you. Believe me, you'll feel at home here. I felt a little better. For the first time in a long time, I felt, not just heard, that I had a choice. That I can change the route of my life. My family decided how to live my life without asking. But I'm still Kelly. A woman who saved for 3 years to create something of her own. 2 days later, I contacted Laura. She turned out to be a middle-aged woman with thick brown hair, a clear voice, and a slight insolence in her intonations, as if life had tempered her, but not embittered her. We had our first video call at Zoom, and I immediately felt like I could trust her. I told him what kind of house I was looking for, not a palace, not something ostentatious. Just a warm place where you can hide from the noise of the world, work quietly, grow plants on the windowsill and maybe walk the dog in the morning. She listened attentively, nodded, and took notes. I have one in mind, she said at the end. It's not on the website yet, but I think you'll like it. A small Victorian cottage. 2 floors, an attic, a small courtyard with an apple tree. The neighbors are a family of artists, they say. They are pleasant. The house is bright, with high ceilings. And, most importantly, it has one room that is perfect for an office. You work from home, don't you? Yes, I replied, and my heart felt warm. That sounds perfect. She sent me the photos. In the first picture, the house looked like a toy, a light gray facade with white frames, a neat porch, steps framed by geraniums. The courtyard, surrounded by a low fence, seemed to hint, you'll be safe here. I looked at every corner, every detail, as if I were peering into my own future. Inside there are wooden floors, a kitchen with full-length windows, a bedroom with a sunset view. The room Laura was talking about was really like a dream office, sunny, with built-in shelves, almost begging me to put my desk chair there. I didn't think about it for a long time. Laura and I made a preliminary application, launched the verification process, and everything started to turn around. 3 weeks later, just 3 weeks, I had the electronic purchase documents in my hands. I signed them with a trembling hand, while my heart was pounding in my chest like a marathon runner at the finish line. I didn't say a word to my parents. They still thought I was choosing their perfect home. I continued to delay with the answers, lying that the bank required additional verification, that the transaction was suspended. With each lie, I felt better, as if I were pulling out another piece of my will from under their influence. "Well, are you ready for a new life?" Julie asked when I told her that the house was mine. I looked out the window at the street, where the trees were swaying in anticipation of autumn, and for the first time in a long time I felt not alarm, but lightness. I knew that there were many unknowns ahead. But I also knew it was my choice. "I'm ready," I replied. More than enough. Friday evening turned out to be quiet, almost deceptively calm. The sky over Providence turned into muted shades of amber and purple, and as I drove through the familiar streets to my parents' house, it seemed to me that this was the sunset of not only a day, but also a whole period of my life. The car's engine rumbled dully, like a heart beating before a leap into the unknown. There was a bottle of cheap wine in the glove compartment, and a ball of anxiety in the bag, compressed into a tight ball. I invited them all to dinner, Mom, Dad, Lauren, and her husband Jason, and I didn't know how I was going to find the words. But she knew for sure there was nowhere else to retreat to. Mom opened the door for me. She hugged me with unexpected fervor, in which I immediately felt something fake, theatrical. "Here she is, our landlady," she said with a smile that made my throat constrict. "I'm so proud of you, honey." My father, as usual, silently shook my hand and patted me on the back. Lauren was sitting on the couch, dressed too neatly for a family dinner, as if she had come to a special event. Jason looked awkward. He avoided making eye contact with me. The kitchen was filled with the smell of baked lasagna, the smell of my childhood, Sunday dinners, and comfort. But today, it all seemed like a mask hiding expectations and lies. Dinner was held in a strange silence. We ate, talked about the weather, traffic jams, and how the neighbors' children had grown up. No one mentioned the word house, and even more so did not ask me directly. They all seemed to be waiting. They were waiting for me to say everything myself. That I would say the right words and reveal the finale of the play, in which they had long ago distributed the roles. When we finished, I put my fork on my plate and straightened up. My heart was pounding in my chest, but my voice was surprisingly steady. "Well, it's time to tell you." Mom instantly perked up, her face lit up. She even touched my hand. "Did you buy a house? Did you choose the 4-bedroom one we saw in Warwick?" I shook my head, not looking away. "No. The wrong one." There was a pause. Heavy, viscous, like a thick fog. Mom took her hand away. Her smile disappeared, as if it had been erased with an eraser. My father frowned. Lauren stared at her plate. "Which one, then?" Mom asked, already wary. I took a deeper breath than usual. The whole air felt better. "Before I tell you about this, you should know something. I was at your house a few weeks ago. Back when you were talking to Lauren on speakerphone. I heard everything." Mom froze. Her face turned as white as the tablecloth on the table. The father lowered his gaze. Lauren bit her lip. "I heard you say you were going to move in with me. That you'd give the house to Lauren and Jason. That I am alone, without a husband and children, and therefore must be useful. I heard you say, Mom, that you have me under control. That I will do whatever you say." Mom made a movement as if she wanted to get up, but stopped. Her hands clenched into fists. "Kelly, this is—" "Don't tell me I got it all wrong," I interrupted sharply. "I understood everything exactly as you said it." My father finally looked up. "We just thought it would be better for everyone. You've always been alone. We wanted to help you." "Help me?" I smiled bitterly. "Help me by forcing me to buy a house that you planned to move into without my knowledge? Should I help by giving my house to Lauren, as if I'm the victim who's supposed to finance this whole plan?" Lauren spoke for the first time. "We just thought that it would all work out somehow." "What are you? Well, you won't mind." "You knew," I said slowly, You knew everything. You've heard my mother call me an old maid. I heard them discussing how I would pay their bills. And you were comfortable." Jason looked like he wanted to disappear under the table. "I bought a house," I continued. "But not in Warwick. Not in Providence. Not in Rhode Island." Mom roused herself. "What do you mean?" "I bought a house in North Carolina. In Asheville. And I'm moving there in a week." "What?" Mom's voice was high, pitched, shrill, like a broken string. "But how?" "We thought." "You thought you could build my life without me," I said calmly. "You thought I wouldn't notice. That I, as always, would agree. But it's over." Mom jumped up. "This is betrayal. We've already turned the house over to Lauren and Jason. We've arranged everything. Where are we going to live now?" "I do not know, Mother. It was your choice. Not mine." "You can't just," my father began, but I raised my hand. "I can. And I've already done it. I won't tell you exactly where I live. You won't know my address. You're not coming to my place. I am not your ATM. I'm not your spare room. And certainly not someone whose loneliness you can use for your own purposes." Silence. Complete, crushing. Mom sat back down, not taking her eyes off me. Her face was white, and her lips were trembling. Lauren moved a little further away from the table, as if my words were somehow contagious. "It's all over," I repeated. "I don't want to live under your control anymore. I don't want to hear that I have to think about the future. My future is something that I will build myself. Without you." I stood up. My bag was lying next to me on a chair. I took it and walked slowly to the door. No one stood up. No one said stay. And it was probably the best confirmation that I was doing the right thing. On the threshold, I turned around. "I hope one day we will be able to talk like adults. But that will be when you stop seeing me as a project. And you will start to see a person." And she went out. She closed the door, as if putting an end to it. Solid, not editable. The evening was already dark, but I could feel the morning beginning to blossom inside. The first morning in Asheville took me by surprise. I didn't wake up to the rumble of a garbage truck, the trampling of neighbors from above, or the annoying sound of notifications on my phone. I woke up to the silence. She was thick as a morning mist, and surprisingly kind, the kind that you don't notice until you find out what it's like to live in constant noise. I was lying on my new bed, still unfamiliar, but already familiar, and staring at the white ceiling with light shadows from the swaying branches outside the window. For the first time in a long time, I woke up not from anxiety, but from inner peace. The house turned out to be even better than I imagined. Creaking floorboards, a high ceiling with wooden beams, windows through which the morning sun flooded the entire hall with honey-warm light. I walked through the rooms as if through a museum of my own desires. I touched window sills, opened cupboards, looked into the pantry, not because I needed to, but because I couldn't believe that all this belonged to me. The house breathed freedom and quiet confidence. There wasn't a drop of control in any of his walls. I was slowly settling in. She arranged books, hung paintings, which remained in rolls in the old apartment. I bought myself an armchair, a large, soft one with deep armrests, in which you could drown with a book for the whole evening. I planted basil and mint in the courtyard, and every time I passed by, I touched them with my fingers, inhaling the fragrance of the life I had chosen myself. On Saturday, I went to a coffee shop around the corner. It's small, with a wooden counter, a display case with pastries and a sign that says "We work from 7 a.m., for real heroes." A barista with a tattoo on her neck and eyes the color of wet amber asked me how much I loved coffee, and after listening, she nodded. "This is the first time I've seen you." "Yes," I replied, smiling. Just now. From Rhode Island. Welcome, Kelly. I'm Riley. If anything, ask away. We get our own people here quickly. I started going back there more and more often. Sometimes I took a laptop, sometimes just a book and coffee. I felt like I was part of something alive and kind there. A couple of weeks later, I signed up for yoga. Classes were held in a bright studio that smelled of lavender and eucalyptus. The teacher, a gray-haired man with a voice like old jazz, called me new girl, but he always said it with a smile. My neighbor, Clara, invited me to a barbecue for no reason. And when I came, she hugged me as if she had known me for many years. Life here flowed steadily, like a river on a July afternoon. Every day I felt like I was regaining something that I had lost in the noise of parental expectations. I no longer woke up feeling guilty. I didn't think about who needed to please today, who to reassure, whose dreams to realize instead of my own. My life has finally become mine. Simple, honest, real. But the past, of course, did not give up. At first there were calls. The parents' numbers flashing on the phone screen are like fragments of an old life. I blocked them. Then there were text messages, abrupt, disturbing, accusing. Why are you doing this to us? Isn't family the most important thing? I didn't answer. Then the letters came. Real, paper ones. It was as if they hoped that the handwritten text would make me soften up. Some were filled with pity, others with anger, and others with outright blackmail. If you don't tell us the address, we'll come looking for you. I put them in a folder without opening them. She called her toxic past. One evening, when I was sitting on the porch with a glass of wine and listening to the crickets chirping, the bell rang. Unknown number. I hardly answered, but something about this number seemed familiar to me. Kelly? This is Sarah. Your aunt. I straightened up. Hi, Sarah. Haven't heard from you in a long time. Yes, she hesitated. I'm not going to blame you. Simply. I was worried. I wanted to know how you were. I'm fine, I said. Even more than fine. I'm glad. I heard you went far away. My parents, well, they moved in with Lauren. Not everything is smooth. I guessed it, I said softly. Josh and your dad fight a lot. And your mom, she can hardly bear that she's a guest now. And then Lauren is pregnant again. They want to give the room to the child. My parents don't know where to go anymore. I was silent. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I didn't want to lie. I wasn't sorry. Kelly? Her aunt's voice was cautious. They made their choice, I finally said. They built this scheme themselves. Now let them clean it up themselves. I understand. Simply. I wanted you to know. And maybe. I'm proud of you. You did what I couldn't. You said no. Those words hit me in the heart. I thanked her, said goodbye, and sat for a long time looking into the darkness, in which there was finally no fear. I was no longer their comfortable daughter. She was not a silent piece that could be moved around the board. I was a woman with my own home, with a choice, with a voice. And with the silence she deserves. 4 months have passed since the day I closed the door of my old life behind me and opened a new one that I built myself, step by step, without regard for other people's expectations and reproaches. I no longer woke up surrounded by walls filled with other people's voices. Instead, I was woken up by the whisper of leaves outside the window, the morning light creeping cautiously through the white curtains, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee, which I now brewed only for myself, not to please, not to keep up a conversation, but simply because I wanted to. The house in Asheville gradually filled up with me. Not with things, but with sensations. I didn't try to make every corner furnished. I didn't pursue fashionable interior solutions. I just followed my intuition, and it led me to simplicity, to comfort, to those little things that form a real own. A warm woolen blanket that I bought at the local autumn fair appeared in the bedroom. It smelled faintly of wood shavings and lavender, and when I covered myself with it in the evenings, it felt like I was being hugged not by hands, but by silence itself. Ceramic pots with geraniums and rosemary stood on the windowsill. The greenery reminded of summer, even when it was raining outside. The office, located on the second floor, became my sanctuary. I put my soul into him, and he generously repaid me with comfort. A white desk, a high-backed armchair, a table lamp with warm light, and, of course, the internet is the fastest I've ever had. I no longer felt like I was working to escape from something. I worked because I wanted to, because I loved my job, and because it was in this house that my work was an extension of my peace, and not a means to prove my worth to someone. In the kitchen, the heart of any home, there were curtains that I sewed myself. Funny, bright cotton with a pattern of small leaves and berries. I spent more than one evening sitting at the sewing machine, listening to music and laughing with Julie, who came with a bottle of cider and declared that she would be my muse of home decor. We chatted, sewed, and tried on fabrics for the windows, like girls in childhood trying on their mother's dresses. And in this simplicity, in this simple joy, I felt alive. I loved this house. Every plank of it, every crack of the floor in the evenings, every unevenness in the plaster. I didn't need a perfect gloss. I needed a space where I could be myself. And I found it. Or maybe it found me when I stopped looking for something to prove something to someone. That Sunday evening, I walked through the rooms like I was going through the pages of a book that you read for the last time before you put it on the shelf, not because you're not interested, but because you know it's yours forever now. Outside the window, the trees were in flames. Autumn had come into its own, and it seemed that even the air had become thicker, slower. The leaves were spinning like dancers in gold and copper, and I couldn't look away. I went to the window and stood for a long time, leaning my forehead against the cold glass. There was everything in that moment: gratitude, peace, a sense of a place where you don't have to pretend, where no one demands explanations, imposes schemes, or pushes you where you don't want to go. My phone vibrated. Message from Julie: Saturday is the peak of autumn colors. I smiled, without taking my eyes off the landscape, beyond which the fire of the leaves merged with the slowly fading sky. I can't wait, I replied. Sometimes I thought about my parents. Not with anger, not with pain, but with a light, transparent sadness. Like something that's in the past, like a letter that you've read and put aside. Maybe someday I'll be able to talk to them again. Maybe not. But now I knew that I was in my place. And that's enough. I turned off the light and went into the bedroom. My footsteps were soft, like the silence in a house that was no longer penetrated by other people's voices. Lying in bed, I listened to the wind outside the window picking through the branches, as if flipping through the pages of a diary. The world didn't demand anything from me. He was just there, calm, accepting, the way I always dreamed of seeing him. This house is not just a shelter. It was a choice. My choice. It was not a reaction to other people's pressure. It was not a compromise. It was not an escape. He was an extension of me. The house I chose.